It is 8:30 Eastern time, the only time zone that I don't know. Austin's not here. Austin's the one who handles this stuff. The only time zone that doesn't have Austin hosting this show on a chaotic version of tonight's show. We will be going over all of the top coaching moves. The Lane Kiffin drama at Ole Miss as he heads to LSU. Alex Golesh signing with Auburn, and Will Stein to Kentucky. Chris K and I will give you guys a breakdown of what all these moves mean right after the stinger. For those of you not watching live on the podcast version, it is just Chris K and myself. Despite what the description says, Austin Nace decided he's doing 2 shows tomorrow, so he didn't want to do a show today, which I guess is fair. Chris, we have a lot of coaching news that has happened over the past couple days. I don't know that one is necessarily bigger than the other, but obviously the one everybody is talking about has been the Lane Kiffin drama. And the one thing that I hate about Austin not being here is I avoid a lot of that stuff. I don't pay attention to the drama, all the rumors they were talking about on Campus Life. If you're listening to this on Wednesday, the Tuesday show that him and Colin do, Austin, that is. So I don't know what any of the Lane Kiffin drama is outside of him obviously not coaching at Ole Miss and for the playoffs and heading to LSU. But let's start there. Let's give a breakdown of his contract here. He signed a 7-year contract worth $91 million. It is $13 million a year before incentives. What are your thoughts here, though, on all of the, I guess, drama around him not coaching the Ole Miss playoff games? I'm sorry. Let's see. What else did they say? I love that he had to remove the Ole Miss logo from his statement as well. They didn't even give him access to that. He just released his own statement. What are your thoughts on this whole Lane Kiffin drama? He's getting a lot of hate for all this.
This shouldn't be all that surprising. I will say Mox is the guy that really we're missing here because he is all about the random drop. I mean, he was talking about Juice, the dog, not being his dog. And I'm like, dude, I don't know
any of this stuff.
Like, I love dogs, but come on, man. I have no idea what's going on. So Mox also is very sorely missed.
He is.
I mean, honestly, are we surprised? Like the way that he acts in games, post-game, pre-game, everything is very like cool and funny in a silo. But like when you come to these like big-headed decisions that like impact so many people, like, oh, shockingly, he's kind of a, dickhead. Like, oh, wow. Are we acting surprised here? Like, so I'm not surprised by it. I think I don't really care. It doesn't impact me. I hope everybody that's impacted is fine. But like, I don't know. It is what it is. He's kind of a funny personality. He made a decision to go to LSU. It seems like the money that Ole Miss was offering was like probably close, if not similar. So like clearly something about LSU was enticing to him. What's wild is that like the fact that he's not coaching his whole goal, right, is to win a national championship. And this might be the best shot at a national championship for him in the next couple of years. And he's foregoing it, right? Like, I mean, this LSU team was pretty bad. Now you can do quick turnover in college football these days, but he's a great coach for college football. But he's kind of like foregoing what his best case is for like the next couple of years. So it's kind of an interesting use case here and like what's going to happen in the future with these types of things. I doubt we see similar things because he's kind of that much of a personality and that strong-headed to say, screw it, I don't care. But I don't know. Are you surprised by how this whole played out and, the fact that he's foregoing playoffs? Or obviously it's not his decision, but he made the decision, which obviously was going to mean he wasn't going to coach.
No, I expected him to go to LSU based on typically, at least what it seems like as of late, is these coaches who are not leaving get those extensions fairly quickly, or they usually come out with a statement and say, hey, like, I'm not going, like completely off of Sataki, I believe, for BYU has come out and already telling the team, hey, I'm not leaving. I'm not taking the Penn State job, right? Typically, if they're not leaving, we get them. They say that pretty early on, or there's like an announced extension. So the fact that wasn't happening with Lane Kiffin and the fact that he kept saying, well, I'm going to let you guys know after the Egg Bowl, to me, made me think like he was likely leaving for either Florida or LSU, because I don't think at that point in time then it was like really confirmed he wasn't possibly going to Florida. I'm curious as to what all the discussion was behind the scenes with him coaching and everything. Because like I get it from both sides. I get it from the people saying it makes no sense for him to be allowed to coach for a rival for multiple weeks into the offseason, while he's also trying to put together everything going on at LSU in very important games for Ole Miss. I mean, he's not wrong, I think, in what he said. This is the most successful season that LSU or Ole Miss has ever had. So I get why he would want to stay and do it, and I get why people say you can't have your cake and eat it too. So I do kind of get those arguments. I think from me, and I don't know if we've seen anything from it yet on what the players wanted, because that was kind of my biggest thought process, I guess, or where I kind of went to on this. If the players wanted him to keep coaching, I think they should have taken that into effect and then given him that option. Obviously, it sounds like he wanted to keep doing it. Now, maybe he's just saying that. Where I do think, I kind of think that this is always, and usually is all about Lane. Lane is a very, self-driven person, or he makes a lot of things about himself. But I also think it's kind of a good thing for college football to have coaches like him and just people like him in the sport. I think he makes it fun.
The personalities are great for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be, over the next couple of years, at least in the state of Ole Miss and probably through a lot of other parts of college football. I'd say the old heads of college football. He's going to be a villain. He's going to be a villain of college football for the next couple of years moving forward. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think, Saban was that for a time, mainly due to probably his little bit of curmudgeonous attitude, but also the winning. Like, he was very successful.
Too good.
Yeah. And so people hate that. People, they like you at first and they want to see you fail. So he was hated for that. I think Lane will become a villain in the sport, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think every sport needs villains, whether I do think he is somewhat entertaining. I do think that he handled some of this poorly as well. And a coach we'll talk about probably toward the end of this episode is like Mark Stoops negotiated a lower buyout with Kentucky to get out the door and allow them to hire a new head coach. And then Lane Kiffin kind of took, how long are we talking about this? 2-3 weeks of what is Lane going to do? That is where I thought in my head he was being a little bit selfish, because I think he probably knew fairly early on he was going to go to LSU. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Like, it is not meant as a shot at Ole Miss, but I think if you were to tell me, Matt, you can go coach for Ole Miss or LSU for a chance to win a national championship, 9 out of 10 people are taking LSU because of the money, the resources, the recruiting. Like, I'm sorry. It just is overall a better job. And so if Lane wants to win that national championship, I get why he made the move. I think he should have done it sooner. One of the things with going to LSU is he did have, at least in my opinion, a very successful run at Ole Miss. He was there for 6 seasons. He was 55-19. Very decent recruiting classes over his time there. So in his first year, 34th ranked overall, then 17th, 15th, 17th, 17th, and this year's class 16th, assuming nobody flips. Early signing day is actually tomorrow, depending on when you listen to this, December 3rd. With him going to LSU, one of the things Austin and I have talked about on this show, and you might have been on when we were talking about this with Brian Kelly. I can't remember if you were on that show. We mentioned him getting fired and everything, but he didn't do a very good job of like keeping those players in state. They're raised to be LSU fans. I think Lane Kiffin's going to be able to do that which likely means LSU is turned around quickly. I think it was the Cover 3 podcast. It might have been a different one that was mentioning that if he doesn't win a national championship in 3 to 4 years with LSU, it'll be considered a failure. Do you agree with that?
That's steep. I think you could be aggressive and say he needs to make a Final Four, or like he needs to make a championship. But like, to win a championship in itself that's steep. That's aggressive. Like, there's so many other things that go into play. Think about how dominant Ohio State's been over the years. With a 12-team playoff, Ohio State's always going to be in the mix, right? And that's a very good, well-coached team with always getting studs at recruits, right? Bama and Georgia. Like, there's too many things that can happen for me to say, yeah, he has to win a championship in 3 years and think that that's fair. Now I'll say next year's expectations, I'm not sure where I land on that, but in 2 years, like not next year, but the next 2027, like he needs to make the playoffs. Like for this to make sense, for him to forego what he's done at Ole Miss and what's honestly pretty inevitable at Ole Miss over the next couple of years, based on what we've seen, he needs to be making the playoffs. And if he's not making the playoffs, it's 100% a failure. Like, that's a ton of money. The whole thing that went down, bad publicity, like, you got to make the playoffs. I mean, at the very least, so championship is too much for me. What do you think?
I think national championship's too much. I think if he wins an SEC title, it will be a big deal, and that will probably buy him some more time. I do think at a school like LSU, which what would you consider that top 5 job in the sport? I mean, what would you put over it? Probably.
We've talked about it in the past. I think LSU it lands at like 5-ish.
Yeah.
But I think like undoubtedly it's a top 8 program.
So you're talking about, let's just say top 10 to be safe. You're talking about a top 10 job in the sport, which again has a very good recruiting base. Again, Louisiana is a hotbed for recruiting, and if he can keep a lot of those players in state, supposedly there's no issue with money and NIL there. I would find it very hard to say that if in the next 4 years, not only does he not make the playoffs, I want to say you've got to at least make the national championship. I'm not saying you have to win it, because it's hard to win a national championship. I don't I get how many times Nick Saban did it. Was it 7-8 times in his career at Alabama? I mean, obviously Kirby Smart has 2 now. He did the back-to-backs. I don't think he's won one since then, but he's had the back-to-backs. Ryan Day has one, might win another one this year. We might see a new coach win it this year if Kirby Smart and Ryan Day both get knocked out early in the playoffs. It is hard to win a national championship. I can't tell you off the top of my head, but there's, I think, 4 coaches currently in college football who have won an a FBS level. I'm sorry, a Division I level championship, because obviously Kalen DeBoer won a couple in Division II, or maybe it was Division III. I think Summerall won one, or so one of the new coaches also has won one in the lower division levels. But it is hard to win a national championship. I think making it a success for Lane having to win a national championship, I do think is a little bit steep. But I think he's got to not only, like you said, I think LSU is a team that should be, I think it's fair to give him a year or two. But after that, if we're talking 7 years, those next 5 years, if they don't fire him early, he should be in the playoffs every year. There should be no reason he shouldn't be.
I think it's a 1-year thing.
That might be fair too.
But the way the portal is, everything can be flipped in a year. So if you better make it happen in year 2. I mean, think about Ole Miss, right? You rattled off their recruiting classes, typically in the teens, essentially, right? 15-ish. But like Trinidad Chambliss, Kewan Lacey, Stribling, Harrison Wallace, Daquan Wright, like Luke Haas, all these guys, skill-wise at least, were transfers. Which does that is that included within that recruiting ranking that you provided? Or was that just strictly high school?
That was strictly high school. His recruiting classes, for the transfer portal they've been top 10.
Exactly.
He's really going into the transfer portal.
So he's been, Ole Miss is not the same level. What's LSU been at in terms of high school recruiting? Typically, they're top 10-ish, right? I mean, with Brian Kelly.
Even with Brian Kelly, they've been top 10. Yeah,
he's going to walk into a great spot recruiting. Yeah. Proven spot at recruiting. Doesn't really matter who's there. And he's for a high school kid, that's a likable guy. And now he's getting, you got to think Kewan Lacey's coming. Like, you got to think he's going to be able to pull a couple receivers that he likes, that can fit his system, that maybe aren't like first rounders, like a Jeremiah Smith or Jordan Tyson type of level of talent, but just fit the mold of what he needs for the offense. He's going to make it happen offensively. What's funny is I think the defense for Ole Miss has been really pretty good for years and years and years. Like that, I think they call it like the shark defense or something like that. Like, they've been really good. So like, there's no reason for him to not produce in year 2. I mean, year 1 might be a little bit steep, but still, I think for this portal day and age, you can make anything happen in a year.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up, is like, he has gone very heavily into the transfer portal. And obviously succeeded with what he's done over the past couple years. I mean, last year they just missed making the playoffs. That was the Jackson Dart. I can't remember what game it was. They should have won. He ended up throwing like 3 or 4 interceptions in that game.
They lost to, was it Kentucky, or was that 2 years ago?
It was Kentucky. It was Kentucky. So it was a game they should have won. And I don't know how much you put on Lane. Jackson Dart was just, who had a very good final season with Ole Miss, just had a really bad game and cost him a playoff spot. They call them the Land Sharks. is what they call the defense. So yeah, I'm with you on Lane, which we'll move to that obviously with Pete Golding, the defensive coordinator, getting the head coach job at Ole Miss. We'll pivot to Ole Miss here in a minute for all you Rebels fans. I don't disagree. I think if Lane attacks the portal hard, which I think he will do, I think there's going to be some people who expect LSU to possibly be in the playoffs in year one. I don't even know how much. Like I'm sure they're not going to be calling for him to get fired after year one, but I think they'll be expecting him to have a successful season. There's a lot they've got to fix there, though. I mean, LSU has been known over the past decade for their defense and their wide receivers. Don't have any really good wide receivers. They lost Tristan Keys, at least as of right now. The top wide receiver recruit in this 2026 class flipped to Tennessee, I'd say probably about a month and a half ago. I doubt that he's going to be able to flip him back. They don't have a ton of really good wide receivers on that roster. Obviously, Garrett Nussmeier is going to the NFL. What does the quarterback room look behind them? You mentioned them bringing in Keywan Lacey. I mean, I still think Caden Durham is a decent running back, but they bring in Keywan Lacey. Like, what does that look like? They're going to have to improve the defense a little bit. I think it's fine, but they're losing some pieces on that side as well to the NFL. I mean, Lane does have his work cut out for him. I don't think he's going to be stepping into LSU, and it's going to be, I don't think, an immediate success. I really do think that they've got to give him at least a year.
Yeah, what's interesting is this Pete Golding hiring. I don't know who Ole Miss would have gone after. Like, Ole Miss is obviously coveted compared to Stanford, Virginia Tech, whatever. They kind of feel like a similar-ish to Penn State, except they're SEC with more, similar success recently. So fairly comparable. So, and Penn State's struggling to find somebody, right? So, I don't know who Ole Miss would have gone after. It seems like there's a lot of camaraderie, a lot of love for Golding as the DC that's risen up the ranks. He was at Alabama, I think, for like 4 years.
Yes.
I don't really know much about him, but I know, like I just said, their defense has been really good. Like you mentioned, Land Sharks. Thanks for correcting me there. I knew it didn't sound right. It didn't sound cool at all just to be the Sharks. So yeah, I think that's an interesting hire. Maybe sometimes you make the hire to keep some consistency with some recruiting and with some current day and age, current schedule. Like they have the playoff, right? So there's some value in maybe holding on to that. But yeah, I guess on the Ole Miss topic, where do you stand on where Ole Miss should be ranked for the playoff? Do you think they should have been impacted by the changes, right? Because
no.
Florida State didn't make the playoff because of an injury. Is this the same level of impact with the change?
Yeah, I don't. Well, before we do we want to anything else we want to talk about on the LSU side of things to put a bow on the LSU discussion? Good there? Okay.
I'm good there.
Golding, yes. So Golding spent time at UTSA and then Alabama 4 years, I think, is their defensive coordinator. Won a national championship. He was the defensive coordinator for the year that I'm pretty sure it was the COVID year, 2020, where Devonta Smith carved up the Buckeyes defense and Justin Fields did nothing in that game. That was not a great game for the Ohio State Buckeyes when they won the national championship. And obviously, Ole Miss has had a very good defense since he's come over to Ole Miss, which I don't remember what year that was. I think it was 2022 or 2023. Okay. So 2 years. They've had a very good defense. Again, they've attacked the portal hard, got some very good defensive players through the portal the past couple of years. It does seem like the players are really happy that Pete Golding got the job, which I do think is good in keeping some kind of, consistency, I guess, within the program. Those players know Pete Golding. The one thing that I do think is probably not talked about enough on the Golding side of things, at least with Alabama, was he was an incredible recruiter for them. He was one of those guys who really locked down a lot of the top recruits, specifically on the defensive side for Alabama. So I know there was some people making fun of, I guess there's a video posted, I haven't had a chance to really watch it, of him talking in the locker room to the players and him seeming a little bit uncomfortable, maybe not super energetic. I think it's hard to say anybody is Lane Kiffin. Lane is one of one, so I don't think it's fair to compare. The person coming after Lane's going to be a little bit different. But dude is an incredible recruiter, so I think Ole Miss is going to keep that for them, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I do think what's going to help them when we're talking specifically the playoff conversation is that Charlie Weiss Jr. is apparently, to use a soccer term, on loan to Ole Miss for the playoffs. He followed Lane Kiffin to LSU, for those of you who don't know. And then Lane Kiffin said in his statement today, I've talked with LSU, and I don't remember who the AD is, and we're going to let Charlie Weiss Jr. go back to Ole Miss and coach the offense. And I let the committee know he's going back because those players deserve to have him and everything else. So it sounds like Charlie Weiss Jr. is still going to be back there calling the offensive plays. But I will say, even if he wasn't, I do not think Ole Miss should be punished. I get that they're losing their head coach, but why are we punishing the players who went out on the field and did what they did to get to an 11-1 season because their coach up and left? Like, if that's what we're doing, to me, why are we even doing this? So what are we doing anymore? Why? Like, there's certain things with college football I've never understood. I'll use, your one of your favorite programs, that team up north. With everything that happened with Harbaugh, in fairness to them, I don't think they got really punished. They did get some interesting penalties against them. I think it was this year. A lot of it with the scholarship and like NIL stuff, but nothing on the field. Like, the one thing I've hated about college football in the past is when these programs would get punished for things, and then they would take the current team, some of which a lot of those players had nothing to do with what happened. It could have been something happened 4 years ago. And it's like, oh, bowl ban, whatever, playoff ban, y'all can't do it. Why? Why are those players being punished for something they had no part in? On top of that, let's just be honest, who are you going to put in over Ole Miss? Miami? Why? Miami sucks. Miami's not good. BYU's probably going to lose in the first round. Ole Miss has got a better shot. They just have better talent. Like, I really hope they don't, and I don't think that they will. I personally don't think you punish Ole Miss at all. Sure, again, they lost their head coach, and whether Charlie Weiss Jr. was coming back or not, I think you leave them wherever they were. I think I had them 7 in my rankings. We won't have a top 25 today because we're obviously going live a little bit earlier than usual with all of our national signing stuff going on tomorrow. I think I had him at 7 last week. It was 6 or 7, 6-7 for the kids out there watching. I would not have moved them. I'd have left them right there and let them go into the playoffs, and whatever happens. Because honestly, there's a part of me that's rooting for them to win a national championship right now to stick it to Lane a little bit.
It'd be pretty awesome.
It would be.
I did not realize Charlie Weiss was on loan. I just Googled it in the behind. Yeah. You're completely correct. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think you just have to let it happen. You just rank them as you should rank them, like nothing ever happened. And you just see because like what they've done on the field is certainly worthy of it. And all the players are still there, like you've kind of mentioned, right? But there's definitely an impact to coaches leaving.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not consistent, right? Like sometimes it matters and seems like, and sometimes it doesn't. It's also different when we're talking about like kids in a playoff game versus like these guys playing the Boca Raton Bowl. Like there's a difference in like that motivation and showing up type of thing. Plus with the playoff, it's 3 weeks away. So they have plenty of time to prepare for it and that type of thing with the new coaching staff. It's not like they got to figure out new coaches, new offensive system, or like terminology, whatever that might change with a new guy that takes over as the OC. So I didn't realize about Charlie Weiss, but that is hilarious. I guess Charlie Weiss sucks as a recruiter because they don't really care about if he's going to be there or not.
Well, I mean, I would think Lane probably can handle it. I mean, here's the one thing I do think Lane is a good recruiter too. I think one of the things I gave him credit for a couple years ago was now rookie running back for the Cleveland Browns, Quinshawn Judkins, a player that I was a big fan of a couple years ago. There's a famous picture of Lane Kiffin going, and he played, I don't remember, Pine Peak, Alabama, I believe, is the high school he played. It might have been Pikes Peak. I can't remember. Alabama high school is a low division school in Alabama high school football. And there was a picture of Lane Kiffin sitting all alone in the stands watching this kid play. There was like maybe 30 people in the stands watching this game. And he's out there pouring rain watching. I think Kiffin is a great recruit. I do think he's has a great eye for talent. I think it's one of those things right now where, because I think he's already said he's retaining. We're kind of bouncing back and forth between LSU and Ole Miss here, but he's retaining the I guess, former current defensive coordinator of LSU. It's like, I don't know that Lane has a whole lot more to do. If he can just focus in on the recruiting, I do think it is a cool thing that he's letting Charlie Weiss Jr. go back to Ole Miss to coach again, give that consistency. And I think, again, he said it. He's like, hey, he said he called the committee. I don't know if he actually did that, but that's what he said. I called the committee, let them know he's going back to keep the consistency there. So I do like that for Ole Miss. I'll be very curious to see what happens with them. I don't see why any of the players would hit the portal right now. I mean, there's no real reason to. The portal, I know it technically is open for Ole Miss players now because their coach left, but the actual other portal doesn't. I think it opens later this month, so there's no reason to. Play your playoff games, and then you can hit the portal, because if Lane really wants you, he'll find a way to get you onto the LSU roster without it being an issue, I would think. Kewan Lacey being a prime example.
If he wants to, and he knows, and you're good. Like, you've been there, he's been there, type of thing. I think the portal opens the first 2 weeks of January. I think they moved it to the 2 weeks one time, and it's the January, which is still funky because of the playoff passes that date, but whatever. I thought Lane Kiffin might have like real care for the Florida job. What do you think of this John Summerall hiring?
Well, before we jump into summer, I want to ask you one more thing on Ole Miss before we move on. Because, again, Golding, I think, is an interesting hire. Again, keep some consistency there. Again, I do think that he is a high-level recruiter based on the players he brought in at Alabama and the defensive guys he's brought in for Ole Miss. Where does Ole Miss fall for you now in the SEC? Because over the past couple of years, they've been in like that 4 to 6 range, I think, in the SEC. Obviously, this year they're like in the 3 spot, technically over Texas A&M. I believe the Texas A&M got dropped all the way down with their loss to Texas. How far do you feel Ole Miss will fall with Golding there, at least just currently with what we don't know? Again, right now we're basing this off of, we have no idea what that offense is going to look like, or offensive coordinator, because Weiss is leaving at the end of whatever that playoff run is for Ole Miss to go to LSU.
It's interesting. I would say, obviously Georgia, I would say Bama. Yeah. I think A&M is in a better spot with Elko.
I agree. Yeah.
I think if there's a drop off, it's maybe 1 or 2 spots, and we'll see what happens. I think like if LSU was behind them, they're ahead of them, type of thing. I wouldn't put Tennessee ahead of them.
What about Texas?
I would put Texas ahead of them.
Okay, so 4.
I wouldn't put Florida ahead of them. So like I think there's still. I think Ole Miss is still like up there. I need to see a little bit more. I don't know anything about Golding, and like there has been some transfer stuff that's certainly helped them over the years. But they also, at the same time, too, they've beaten up on a lot of bad teams, and then they lose to some great teams, and they finish 9-3. That has been a lot of Lane Kiffin's years at Ole Miss. Yeah. It's like start 5-0, 6-0, finish 3-3. Like that has been a lot of it. Where would you put them?
I think 5 or 6. It's interesting because obviously we'll talk Florida here in a minute with the John Summerall hire, but you got Oklahoma having a really good year right now. I think you could say they're in the discussion. Vanderbilt just flipped the top quarterback in the 2026 class with what they've been building over the past couple of years. Is Vanderbilt in the discussion? Auburn, we'll talk about Alex Golesh here in a minute. LSU, Tennessee. That's 5 schools right there. If Drink can figure it out a little bit more, It's interesting when you actually go look at it. All of a sudden, it's like, well, wow, are there really 6 teams fighting for like those, 4, 5, 6 spots in the SEC? And I think Ole Miss will be in there. Again, if Golding can keep at least the defense consistent, which what he has done the past 2 years at Ole Miss, it's really going to come down to the offense. And I'll be curious to see what that looks like for them. You mentioned John Summerall. He jumps up from Tulane to Florida. Obviously, Florida fans not too happy about that. They thought they were going to get Lane. That obviously doesn't happen. He signs a 6-year contract, $44.7 million, $7.45 million a year. There is a university termination guarantee, which is included. It is 70% of the remaining annualized compensation. Obviously, for whenever he gets fired. He spent 2 years with Tulane after jumping up from Troy, I believe. 19-7 in his time there at Tulane when I always forget what their head coach's name was.
Fritz?
Willie Fritz went to Houston, I believe. And then Summerall jumped up from Troy here to Tulane. Obviously, I get why Florida fans are a little bit upset here, because if you go and compare his coaching record in the Sun Belt to one Billy Napier, who was Sun Belt Billy, before he was obviously let go this year, is very comparable. Now, I think a little bit different. Summerall did his with a lot of really good defense at Troy. I mean, if I'm remembering correctly, Troy was one of those defenses in the G5 a couple years ago where, I mean, we were talking about they were one of the best defenses in the G5 every season. So, I mean, that's what he kind of built that onto. Lane, not as much now, but I mean, they did have a very good quarterback in Darian Mensah, who just went to Duke this year, got paid a lot of money to go to Duke that they lost, still had a very good season there this year. They were kind of in the playoff race for a while, not a team that's going to make it now. But what were your thoughts here on John Summerall coming to Florida? You think it's a good hire? You know, it's hard to say on the recruiting stuff because I'll just read this real quick. 76, 64, and 70th were his 3 recruiting classes with his time at Tulane. It's also a G5 school. Like it's kind of
private
hard.
school. It's expensive. Yeah. Like I think there's, I mean, it's is it Baton Rouge or New Orleans?
I think it's closer to New Orleans, but I could be wrong.
I think it's New Orleans.
I will look that up.
Not necessarily the easiest or best city to like recruit to. I think New Orleans is great for a high school kid, so maybe it's fine. I liked, by the way, that you said like annualized guarantee for when he
uptown New Orleans is where it's located.
So you said when he gets fired.
I mean, if he gets fired. Sorry,
I just thought it was
gets fired.
That subconscious, and Matt was just telling us that what he thinks.
I mean, you know.
I mean, I don't know. It feels slightly underwhelming, and it also like I think if you would have asked everybody when Napier got fired, like what can you tell me about like what you think the next coach is going to look like? I think a lot of them would have said not coming from the Sun Belt. Like I think that Billy Napier stink is certainly there, but I think of all the options. I think like Auburn would have hired him. I think like Auburn would have definitely like really, really wanted him to some degree, right? So, I mean, Kentucky would have hired him in a heartbeat. Like some of these schools definitely would have. I think it's just a product of like who's actually available, like this is kind of what we talked about weeks ago. Like a lot of jobs open. Like you can't, not everybody can get the superstar, hot, sexy name, right? Like not everybody can get the Lane Kiffin. So like, I think for what it is, they did a good job of it. In a vacuum, I don't necessarily love it. What's interesting with Tulane is kind of what you mentioned is like strong defenses, and they don't play like anything sexy or fun of an offense. Like every year they are very average to below average in like plays per game, very heavy on time of possession. I've seen some stuff about people saying like, hey, let's see what happens in the SEC when your whole thing is controlling the football and playing keep away. I don't think it's like that full on to that degree, but I think there's a level to that is like, what does that mean? Because a lot of these other G5 to P4 coaches have like some really offensive strengths to them, right? Like Golish to Auburn, which we'll talk about, Eric Morris to Oklahoma State. There's a lot of like fun and advantages you feel like those teams are getting with those hires from an offensive standpoint. Not the case with Summerall, but you don't always have to hire the offensive guy. So it'll be interesting to see how in a vacuum. I don't love it, but I totally get it.
I think what I'm about to say is going to be like a backhanded compliment to Florida. I actually do like the hire, and if I'm Lane Kiffin, I would have chose LSU over Florida as well. Again, I think of all the ones that were open, LSU is the best. So like I don't want to keep harping on that. We talk about all these other ones again. I think LSU just has a massive advantage over any of the schools we're going to talk about today. That being said, you mentioned what Summerall did again at I don't know what their defense. I'm going to be honest. I don't know how their defense was ranked at Tulane, but again, at Troy, he was very good. What I did like is I went back and I watched his opening press conference earlier today where he talked about Florida needs an explosive offense. This is mandatory for our success. If he really means that, and he's not pulling a James Franklin where it's like, I'm going to do this and then actually not do it. No offense, because I know you're a Virginia Tech fan. I'm a little worried about your Hokies there with that. But if Summerall does actually go get a hot name at the offensive coordinator position and allows them to just kind of be an explosive offense, I think Florida could be poised, and Summerall could be poised to actually be one of the better hires in this cycle. because of what he does on the defensive side of the ball. I do believe he'll be able to get that defense in shape. And I actually don't think Florida's defense has really been the problem. There have been a lot of games, even this year, where their defense has kept them in games. It's been the offense. They just cannot get that going with Lagway. Again, I think some of that's probably on Billy Napier. We kind of, not as the only ones, but we really kind of questioned that hire when they made it a couple of years ago, along with the Brian Kelly one at LSU. We thought we might be wrong about Brian Kelly to LSU. Looks like we were right on both of those, not necessarily being a success. I think that if Summerall really does go that route, that Florida could be primed to be very good. Again, I can't speak on what I think Summerall is as a recruiter. It's really kind of hard to judge him based on his recruiting at Troy and Tulane. That's just not a fair way to assess him. So I think we have to give him a year or two to kind of see what Florida does. And I don't think you can count this year's recruiting class. Again, the early signing day is December 3rd. So again, me and Chris are recording this on the 2nd. Early signing day is tomorrow. They're not flipping many players at this point. So whatever the recruiting class was under Billy Napier is likely is what it's going to be. They're probably going to have to go heavy in the portal to kind of fill out this roster. And I think we have to wait till that 2027, 2028 class to see what Summerall does. But again, what he's done as a defensive-minded head coach, if he gets that offensive hire, I think Florida could actually be really good. So I am excited to see kind of what that is and what they look like. And I think maybe this could be very different than Billy Napier. Because I see at least a little bit more success overall with Summerall than I ever saw with Napier.
You know, Billy Napier was really pretty good at Louisiana. You know, to what degree does that really mean? Who knows? But I don't know. Of the options available, it felt like the best one. Yeah. The problem is, you know, like I kind of already mentioned, like defensive hires just really don't like give you any sort of tingle, you know, like there's just not really anything fun about like it. Sometimes you don't need fun. You just need good. Right. And maybe that's him.
I think I don't want to compare him to this coach because there's nobody like,
let's hear it.
I am. I'm going to say there's nobody like this coach. This is my favorite coach in all of college football. I think a lot of people said the same thing about Dan Lanning when he went to Oregon. And he has made the exact right hires on offense with Kenny Dillingham in year one, and then Will Stein, who, again, we'll talk about here at the end of the show, after Kenny Dillingham took that job at Arizona State. Dan Lanning has crushed the offensive coordinator hires. Obviously, I think he's just a very energetic coach. I don't know that I get that out of John Summerall. That's why I said I'm not trying to compare the two. But Dan Lanning was a very defensive-minded head coach, obviously worked with Kirby Smart on that Georgia defense. And when he got hired by Oregon, there were people excited about it because I think he was kind of one of the hot names after that Georgia defense was just so dominant for multiple years in a row. But I don't know, people looked at it as like, oh, well, this is the sexy hire, especially after they got destroyed by Georgia in that first year, right? I think it was 49-0 in the opening game where he came back. I think it was if I'm remembering correctly, it was like at the Georgia Dome or in Atlanta. And everybody's like, oh, let's see how this works out. And then Georgia just absolutely destroyed them. That has been, in my opinion, a very big success for Oregon and what they've been able to do. So, again, not saying that John Summerall will be Dan Lanning, but defensive hires, I think if, again, they hire the right offensive coordinator, could be very good.
Yeah, you need a good offensive coordinator hire, for sure. 2 years ago, Tulane played Kansas State super tight, lost by a touchdown. Mm-hmm. Played Oklahoma, lost by 15, but I think I remember that game being tighter than like the 15 points.
It was. I think that was the Pratt game where I think Michael Pratt got hurt. He played the game, but I think he got injured earlier in that game, if I'm remembering correctly. I think Tulane was leading at one point in that game as well, actually.
I think that was the year prior.
Oh, okay.
This was the first year of Darian Mensah. So like not the Darian Mensah we saw with like nearly 10 yards per attempt and stuff like that last year. But he's proven a little bit. He played Florida 2 years ago. They lost. It wasn't close. But Ty Thompson was at quarterback, so you can't really blame him.
I mean, Ty Thompson at quarterback was all you need to say.
That's all you need to know, yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of offensive coordinators, we had, he's a guy that we've mentioned for some of the other jobs here of late. I was curious to see where he would go. We did talk about him last week. I don't think it was Auburn that he was getting rumored to at the time, was it?
It's Arkansas, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And that is one Alex Golesh, USF head coach, is on his way to Auburn. It is a 5-year contract worth $44.4 million, $7.4 million a year. In his 3 years with USF, he was 23-15. Last time he was in the SEC, he was the Tennessee offensive coordinators with their 2 best years of the offense under Josh Heupel. It was the Hendon Hooker years. It's not quite looked the same. I think you could argue none of their quarterbacks have been at least as accurate a passer as Hendon Hooker, but also I'm sure some of it was Alex Golesh leaving. He's had very decent recruiting classes at USF. Again, comparing it to the G5 and what you're competing with in the Florida area with Miami and Florida State. 74th in this year's class, 68 last year in the 80th class overall. There are some performance incentives in this contract as well. He gets $1.5 million for 9 regular season wins. He gets $2 million for 10 regular season wins, $1 million for 11, and $1 million for 12. And I think there's playoff bonuses in there as well, as what has been said. I don't know if there was any money on that, but this is an interesting hire. I'm a big fan of Alex Golesh. I do think that he's a very smart offensive mind, and I do also think I'm very curious to see what this is going to look like on the offensive side of things with Cam Coleman. I think you could argue the second best wide receiver behind Jeremiah Smith, at least in the Ryan Williams has really not been great. So I would put Cam Coleman over him. Just maybe this keep him around now. There's been rumors that he might enter the transfer portal. Is he a guy who could get the best out of Deuce Knight, who was a 5-star quarterback last year? We got to see him in the Mercer game. Obviously did a lot of rushing. Still is a very raw player, but I mean, I think overall better athlete than Byron Brown, who Golesh has done amazing things with at USF. You know, evaluate how you want with the talent competition that they're playing there. Does Byron Brown follow him to Auburn and maybe be the starter? Do they stick with Ashton Daniels? Like, there's still a lot of questions on the Auburn roster. But what were your thoughts here when you saw that Golesh was signing with the Titans?
I was surprised. I like this better than Summerall, I think. I think it's a good fit. I think Auburn, considering what they've done defensively in years past, they needed an offensive hire. They keep Durkin as the defensive coordinator, so you get some consistently. There's no reason for them not to continue to churn out very good defenses. Now you bring in the offensive mind. I mean, I think everybody considered, this is one of the best receiver groups in college football prior to this year. Okay, well, now he's got a group to throw to that's incredible, potentially. And I think what's really interesting about it is what you've kind of mentioned is like the quarterback options here, I think, are phenomenal. You have Deuce Knight, who's the raw but flashed incredible upside and talent in the game against Mercer, obviously FCS, but still, like, you still love to see that. I mean, a lot of freshmen wouldn't have done that, period. Yeah. And then you have Ashton Daniels, who might be similar to like Byron Brown in that he's like a little bit of a bigger guy, can handle a heavier workload. They love the QB run and going full, like, fast and that type of offense. So, like, I think Ashton Daniels could fit just fine in the offense. A veteran. And then you have Byron Brown. Like, does he follow him? That aspect, we've already seen it. Byron Brown has played some games against P4 opponents. I don't think he looked outmatched or like anything that's like worrisome. So lots of QB situations here that I think that makes this a really interesting hire that like makes, I think from a fantasy perspective, you just put some guys on the map here receiver wise. I mean, if Camp Coleman returns, doesn't get poached away somewhere, like he's got to be considered a highly quarterback, which should be considered highly. This is a really interesting hire from like a real life perspective and a fantasy perspective, which is a little bit different than some of these other ones.
Yeah, I was really excited to see Golesh go here again because of the offensive weapons. I mean, again, you have Cam Coleman. I mean, what is Eric Singleton? Is he technically a junior or a senior? I think he's got one more year of eligibility, but I could be wrong there. Obviously, you got Perry Thompson, Malcolm Simmons there as well. Like, this is a team that has got a ton of weapons on the outside. And again, depending on what they do at quarterback, I think Auburn could be a team that we see turning around in a year. Like Alex Golesh, if he brings Byron Brown, who already knows the system, I think you're then just trying to teach the system to everybody else on that team. I mean, Cam Coleman, probably the best quarterback he's played with over the past couple years. I mean, I assume Jackson Arnold's probably out the door. I imagine he's not going to stick around. I don't know that I would trust Golesh to rebound any of his stock if he decided to stay. I think the big question is going to be throughout the offseason with them is if Byron Brown does come back, or if Byron Brown does follow him, Are they able to hold on to Deuce Knight? And then I think Golesh's first priority has got to be retaining Cam Coleman. Like, I've got to get him to stay. If that means, I'm sure the old heads are going to hate me saying that. If that means we got to give him a pay raise or whatever it is we've got to do to get him to stay, you do whatever you can to get, in my opinion, the second best wide receiver in college football to stay on your team. And then we could be talking about an Auburn team who could be competing for a playoff spot last year. I mean, again, I don't know if this was just like maybe it's one of those things you hear it's a shot in the arm when they kind of lose their coach, but they won a couple games and were in the Iron Bowl. Again, I get it's the Iron Bowl, but still, they were in that game without having a decent offense, in my opinion, with at least being called, which I think will change with Golesh coming in the door.
Yeah, this is an interesting team, and probably, I would say almost guaranteed, going to be one of the popular turnarounds of 2026 in terms of predictions. Two quick things here. They lost 6 games by a touchdown or less. That's Oklahoma, A&M, Missouri, Kentucky, Vandy, and Bama. So by a touchdown or less. If they could have scored 25 points in a game, on average, they would have won 10 games. Like if they could have just scored 25 points in those games that they lost, they would have won 10 games this year.
Which puts them in the playoff.
And I think a lot of that he's not going to come in there and be a world beater, but if Dirk can continue to recruit, they can continue to recruit defensively and pump out studs. Out of nowhere, some of these guys defensively, I'm I've not really heard of them, and they're potentially first, second round talents. Keep doing that. Why can't Golesh just get them to 27 points a game? That's not some egregious number in every SEC game. They lost 10-3 to Kentucky. That's ridiculous. So I think this is going to be a really popular one in terms of the hype in the offseason, especially if you can keep Coleman and, do some fun, interesting things in the portal. I think quarterback is obviously the most important thing. I think in college football, if you don't have a quarterback, you can't win, especially in the SEC. So if he can just land Coleman, land a quarterback, and everybody be confident in those two, this is going to be the team. I think everybody's going to be from 5 wins to 10, the biggest turnaround types. I'm not sure I fully believe it, but there's a lot of, I think, evidence to support it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you. I think he could easily do that. Again, a lot of that's going to come down to do they retain Coleman? Does a quarterback like Byron Brown follow them? I was trying to pull up because they obviously have a really good receiver on their team right now, USF, in Keyshawn Singleton. Just maybe he follow him from USF up there. I was trying to see. I mean, he was 2 catches against Florida, but for 75 yards, 5 for 93 against Boise State, only 2 for 39 against Miami. I was trying to see the higher end schools that he played, but overall, I mean, 50 catches for 877 yards and 8 touchdowns there, I believe, is a redshirt sophomore for the Bulls, right?
The Bulls, yeah.
The Bulls. Would be interesting to see if maybe him and Byron Brown follow Alex Golesh there to Auburn, what that looks like. And I do think if you are someone who rosters Deuce Knight on the fantasy side of things, he just gained some more value, in my opinion. Obviously, the game against Mercer probably boosted his value. He's held it where it was. I do think that he probably gained some value with a coach like Alex Golesh coming in because he's just seemed to thrive with quarterbacks of Deuce Knight's skill and talent. And maybe at even a lesser sense, because I don't think he's had a quarterback like Deuce Knight. So I do think that gives you some hope, especially, again, if Byron Brown does follow him, he's got, 1 year left, so then maybe Deuce Knight sits for 1 more year. Still a very raw quarterback, in my opinion, so it might not be a bad thing for him to sit. But Golesh, I think, will definitely put Auburn in that discussion. Again, we were just talking about this with Ole Miss, so I don't want to rehash it, but that probably puts Auburn in that discussion for, again, that 4 to 6 range with the other 6 schools in that range. I think if we're talking about the last 3 schools that we just mentioned with Pete Golding at Ole Miss, John Summerall at Florida, and Alex Golesh at Auburn, I would lean Golesh and Auburn over the other 2 right now. Would you agree with that, or would you go a different route?
I would agree. Yeah, I would agree. The hardest part here is the schedule. I mean, I think that's where it becomes a tougher ask. They play at Alabama, Florida, LSU, at Georgia, at Ole Miss, at Tennessee, and they play Baylor, which is not a world beater, but it's not really the non-con game that you want to open up with. Although they did win it this year, and didn't matter. But yeah, I would lean goalish for sure.
All right, let's actually I'm gonna skip since we're talking the SEC. Let's just finish out the SEC and then we'll move to the last two coach hires, which are both in the Big Ten. Will Stein. This one surprised me because Will Stein was a coach that I was talking about possibly going to some other schools. And now he is from the Kentucky area, but I believe he is more from like the Louisville tree. Is that correct? Like, I believe
I think he is. Yeah, I think I heard some Louisville connection because I heard he was a GA there and a quality control coach. It looks like.
Yeah.
I was surprised as well. I heard his name kind of floating, like, well, if Braum takes the Penn State job, then he'd have his like pick of Kentucky or Louisville go back to Kentucky, like the state and type of thing. So it was interesting how it all played out.
Yeah, I'm curious as to how this is going to work for him because I don't think Kentucky's a great job. No offense, Mike Valerie, for when you listen to this. But I do think Will Stein is a very good offensive coach. There's not much that we can really talk about from the recruiting side of things or even games won. He's only been an offensive coordinator. This is his first job as a head coach. However, we can talk about how good Oregon has been over the past couple of years since he's been the offensive coordinator. In 2022, the Ducks averaged 38.2 points a game, which was 9th nationally. In 2024, they averaged 34.9 points per game, which was 17th nationally. I don't have the 2025 stats. Obviously, the season's not over with, but they've still been pretty good. I don't think they've been quite as good with Dante Moore. And again, their whole wide receiver core has been injured, but they've still been a very good offense. In 2023, the offense ranked the number 13th nationally, averaging 465.2 yards per game. In 2024, they averaged 437 yards per game. The Ducks have led the nation in completion percentage the past couple years, obviously demonstrating their highly efficient passing attack. And the team has scored at least 30 points in 33 of their 39 contests since the start of 2023. And a lot of that, I think, should be contributed to Will Stein. And why I say that is what he was able to do in Bo Nix's second season with the Oregon Ducks, where, again, obviously the first season, Kenny Dillingham there moves off to Arizona State. Everybody's like, well, Bo Nix is not going to be that good. Nope, he was just as good. I actually believe set the record that year for completion percentage. I think, did Dylan Gabriel break it the year after? I think so, he did. So, again, that surprised me. That's that is Will Stein, though. That is the offense that he runs. He was able to make Dylan Gabriel, again, kind of come back to what we saw at UCF. UCF, Dylan Gabriel, where everybody was excited about him. If I'm remembering, that's the correct quarterback, right? Because now I have Mackenzie Milton in my head. Who obviously,
I mean, they both, Mackenzie Milton was also there, and then Dylan Gabriel followed,
He was able to make both these quarterbacks look incredible. The offenses were incredible, passing, running the ball. I don't know that works out at Kentucky, but I do have a lot of faith in Will Stein. He's kind of been the hot name for me that I've mentioned with different jobs. What are kind of like your expectations, I guess, of what Kentucky could be now with Will Stein? I just don't know what to think about this hire. I love it, but I'm not sure it works out.
Well, two other things to note here. He's born in Louisville and played at Louisville. I had no idea he played quarterback there. But also, the UTSA offenses while he was there were incredible. They were 14th and 11th in scoring. So, consistent. And from a fantasy perspective, were also great in terms of those were the Frank Harris years with all the different consistent, condensed receiver usage, which we like to see. Not to get too fancy nerdy, but I don't know. I like the idea of Kentucky now being some team that just wants to run 50 plays a game and just run the football. I think that's really appealing for me as a viewer. I think if you're looking at coordinator hires and who could be the guy that a team would want to, I think we all said Will Stein is one of those options. I think Kentucky kind of shot the moon here and what do you call that? Outkick the coverage. I think this is about as good of an option for them as they could have gotten. So kudos to them. Will it work? I mean, I think it has just as good, maybe if not better than odds than every other guy they could have hired. So, it's Kentucky. It's a basketball school that struggles because they have so many good SEC teams on the docket every single week. So I'm good for them. I wouldn't mind one bit to see them be successful and bring some offensive fun to fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see it again. I think I think we've seen already in college football, and a lot of that I think has been NIL with like the spreading out of talent as it is. I mean, again, I just mentioned for those of you who don't know, I'm sure Austin and I and Matt, Marcus, the recruiting team, will be talking a lot about this on our live shows tomorrow. Make sure to tune in. Early signing day. Vanderbilt flipped the #1 quarterback in the class. Very, very good quarterback. I have him graded as a 5-star. One of my highest graded quarterbacks since being here at the Campus to Canton company. Very, very good player. And Vanderbilt has got him. Like, we have seen talent kind of spreading out throughout the landscape of college football. Now, yes, the top schools are still getting more of that talent, but these other guys are kind of spreading out more and more. I do think that Will Stein will hopefully be able to do that with Kentucky. I'll be very curious to see what that looks like, though, over the next couple of years. I do know that there have been a lot of reports that Will Stein has been a driving force in their recruiting, and one of the major reasons they've landed some of the offensive players that they have. I know for a fact that the quarterbacks are something that it was a big reason why Dante Moore came back to Oregon. A quarterback that I liked a couple of years ago from here out of Dripping Springs, I think is what it was, quarterback. Austin Novosad, who was once committed to Baylor, flipped to Oregon on signing day a couple of years ago. Will Stein was the big reason why he made that flip, because of what he was able to do as a recruiter for him. I do think at some point, Mike Valerie, if you're listening, Stein is going to get a really high-end quarterback out of high school. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see if he's going to be able to do anything with that. I think right now he's probably going to have to go transfer portal to get that quarterback. So I just don't know what to do. Maybe they stick with Cutter Boley. I don't think he's that good. Could be wrong. Maybe Will Stein turns him into a new Dylan Gabriel or Bo Nix. Who knows really what they end up doing with it. But I do think it's an interesting hire. I would say that it's probably on the par level of Alex Golesh for me and how much I like the hire. Like, I think it is a very good hire for Kentucky. I just don't know. I think it was Tom Fernelli on the Cover 3 podcast who made this reference, and I don't think he's wrong if this happens, is for probably the last couple decades, all we've talked about with Indiana is that they're a basketball school. Then they go get Kurt Cignetti. They start pouring money into this, and all of a sudden, Indiana is becoming a football school with what they're able to do. They're about to be playing in the Big Ten championship and in the playoffs, likely with a bye, no matter what happens this weekend against Ohio State. Kentucky has always been considered a basketball school because of what they were doing with John Calipari and everything else. I would not be surprised if we're not saying the same thing about Kentucky in a couple of years because of what I think Stein does from an offensive perspective. It's really going to matter what they do on defense, but I think it is a really good hire for the Wildcats.
I would be super open. I think Indiana being awesome at football is great.
Yeah.
The rebuttal would be that Indiana's schedule these first 2 years.
That's fair.
Is about as advantageous as you can get. I don't think Tom is necessarily wrong. I think we should be way more open to anything being possible. Like legitimately, if Indiana can be a powerhouse for essentially 2 years in terms of wins. Last year, they were a playoff participant that lost a close-ish game in Notre Dame, whatever. But if they can beat Ohio State and go 13-0, anything is possible. It's funny what happens when other teams are able to pay players and they can do it. That's not under the table. So I think good for them. Let's see what happens. I think, Texas will be able to complain about not making the playoff with even more top 25 wins if Kentucky's good.
Yeah. Speaking of offensive coaches, Bob Chesney has left JMU to go to UCLA. It is a 5-year contract. In his 2 years at JMU, he was 20-5. He had the 89th recruiting class this year, 84th this year. Bob Chesney has been known mainly for his rushing attack. They ranked 6th nationally in 2025 with 239 yards per game. Obviously, he's also had just a very good offense over the past couple years with JMU. Struggled a little bit with my microphone just fell over.
So say man down.
The passing attack has struggled a little bit, but I don't know that that's necessarily because of Chesney. It might be just the lack of a high-end quarterback. I guess in a way they technically have that in Nico if he decides to stay. This has kind of been rumored for the past weekish or so about him possibly going to UCLA. I find it an interesting hire. Where did this kind of fall for you on the scale when you saw he was coming to UCLA?
I said this weeks ago. I do not want Bob Chesney at UCLA. Like, I do not, because I think he's an incredible coach. Nate made a really good point in our C2C Slack. Like, Signetti, like, pillaged JMU. And then
Yeah.
JMU went out and hired him from Holy Cross. And he, like, to do what he did at JMU is truly incredible. So I think he's an incredible coach. I think there's some really good opportunity at UCLA. I mean, there's like Indiana, right? You can fall into some really good schedules that you can benefit from, and then you piece together some really good teams. You can go 11-1. I wouldn't be surprised at all, right? But from a fantasy perspective, I hate it. I don't want any super offensive mastermind playing in the Big Ten. We'll see. The roster to me at UCLA is pretty thin.
Yeah.
Like the Nico thing will be really interesting. I don't know. I don't think he's not a good fit for Nico, but maybe he's not. But I just texted my brother. I didn't realize it. My brother was at Johns Hopkins, which is where he was an assistant for a couple of years. So I'm curious, just from like a personality perspective, if he liked him or what he thought of him or whatever. He wasn't this positional coach, but I just looked at that and realized it looking it up. But I think the coach, I think he's incredible. If Virginia Tech didn't get Franklin, like that was the guy I would have wanted. Yeah. Penn State is an idiot. They should have hired him immediately. They went for the 9 out of 10 hot chick, right? And now they're going to land with a 5 because they should have just gone with Chesney, and they just overshot what they were hoping for. So I love it. What do you think? I love him. What do you think?
No, I'm with you. I think Chesney's a great hire for UCLA, and I could see it working out. I mean, right now, you mentioned the Penn State thing. I meant to bring this up earlier when we were talking about Sataki saying that, like, what is his name? Is it Dr. Patrick Kraft? Is that Penn State's AD, correct? That dude, I mean, I know he said that they already knew who they were going to hire. I wonder how much he is freaking out right now that all these coaches are coming up. I don't know who they hire that is going to excite Penn State fans at the moment, but I think it could be a great hire for Chesney. I think the one thing that I'm worried about with them is you already have USC, which I think is going to dominate in that area. Jed Fish has done a good job of recruiting in California, up there with Washington this past year. They're already having a good season as well. Already have all these other teams, obviously, that go into California to kind of pillage that area. I don't know what Chesney's going to do as a recruiter, which I think is going to be a big thing for UCLA. And I want to see what they do at the defensive side, on the defensive side of the ball, because the one big thing I think that UCLA and USC, Washington are all kind of at a disadvantage. I guess everybody in the Big Ten, because they still have to travel to California as well, is what the traveling is going to do to all these teams. But I mean, UCLA, I don't know that they'll ever be considered like a blue blood on the football side of things, but I think Chesney could get them to being relevant. I mean, I could see them being a consistent bowl team. As much as I like Chesney, I find it hard to think UCLA will make the playoffs. I think Big Ten is, I mean, I guess the SEC is a pretty loaded conference too, but if we operate off the belief that we're only going to stick with 14 teams in the playoffs for the next couple of years, do you see UCLA? Or sorry, 12 teams, yeah. Do you see UCLA being able to squeeze into one of those 4 spots, maybe 5 on a good year for the Big Ten?
It's possible. I mean, I'm just looking real quickly at their schedules. Their non-cons not really super competitive, but they're real-ish teams. They've basically just play 3 teams a year. It's like the first 2 years it's Oregon, Michigan, USC. Then the third year from now it's Ohio State, USC, Penn State. So like in terms of like the powerhouse types, you know, so it's possible. I think the Big Ten has I think the Big Ten is very top heavy. And because of that, you do want to avoid 4 to 5 teams max. You do want to avoid 1 or 2 teams on the road in November. Like those are the types of situations you run into in the Big Ten. And if you're UCLA, I think you can get away with some really good years. What's to say they can't go 10-2 2 years from now, and like their losses are to Oregon and Michigan, which is totally reasonable, or Oregon and USC, and then they beat the other team, right? Whether that's Michigan or USC, and they make the playoff. Like it's not that unreasonable, but it just is a matter of what Chesney can bring to UCLA. I think people have hated on the money aspect of it all, and people have called it BS. People have called it legit. Who knows? But we'll have to see what type of investments. A lot of what we're seeing these days is like, oh yeah, the coaching stuff is like the assistant pool of money is huge, or is really a big focus there. And if they're going to do that and like at least have that strong focus for the NIL stuff, then I think anything is possible, because we both agree like Chesney is a very, very good coach.
Yeah. I'll be curious to see what they're able to do. Again, I have hope that they'll be able to be a very good team. Again, I don't think you're wrong in what you said there about the Big Ten, and with that schedule, maybe they can move up into there. I mean, USC has kind of failed to capitalize on that. I think Lincoln Riley is a little bit of a fraud himself. They came very close this year, but I mean, it'll be interesting to see what UCLA does. I think if Chesney can really kind of dig in California and start landing some of those high-end recruits, I think he could turn UCLA around pretty fast. Speaking of USC, TBitW1 said, should USC move back in conference for football? I know the basketball team is doing well. I'm assuming you mean going back to the Pac-12. I would not. And I don't think that they will. Unfortunately, I think a lot of it's just going to be tied to the money that they're making in the Big Ten, which is going to be a big thing for college football moving forward. I think you're talking about it just from like a travel, scheduling, everything else. And honestly, I don't know if the Pac-12 will ever be considered. I don't think we'll ever go back to a Power 5 conference. But if we were, I wouldn't hate it for USC, because I think they would dominate the Pac-12 and be considered the favorite to win it every year and probably be locked into a playoff spot if we ever expanded to 14. And again, they moved the Pac-12 back into what you would, I guess, consider a power conference and move it back to the Power 5 and away from the Power 4. Chris, what are your thoughts on his question?
You got to stay in the Big Ten. I think just monetarily, it makes the most sense. It's not like the SEC. Like I just mentioned, the schedule is not going to be that competitive where you're just like the lower end SEC teams struggle consistently because there's so many teams that can beat them consistently. It's not the same way in the Big Ten. So I don't think you could ever move out of the Big Ten or go back. By the way, are you holding your mic right now?
I am. On the stand broke, so I'm not having to hold it now.
Mike stand just down. Sitting there just breaks randomly without being prompted. Gotta get you some new gear out there. Charge
stand
that.
Stand is down. I will. Austin will either be watching this or listening. Austin, I need a new one. Stat. You want me to do these 2 live shows tomorrow? Because it's not looking good. We're about to go apply some super glue here in a second.
You got to get one of those like Facebook Reel or Instagram like little mics that people hold these days.
I'll just break out my old gaming headset. I'll just plug it into the computer. The big old thing on there look like what's it called?
Like great on TV.
What are those people called? Like the call center people. It was like, hi, yes, you've reached. This is Matt with AT&T. How can I help you today? Yeah, it'll be, that whole thing. We're about to wrap up. One more hire. I don't know if you've seen this. More news came out about Lane Kiffin, so I want to address that at the end. Did you see it?
Go for it. I did not see it.
We'll address that after this, because I don't think this next one will take long. Last coaching hire here. Pat Fitzgerald replaces Jonathan Smith at Michigan State. It's reported as a 5-year deal. Salary is on the lower side, believed to be starting at $5 million a year, with annual escalators heavy on incentives. I think this really sucks for Jonathan Smith. I think he was a very good coach. I don't think he was given a fair shot at Michigan State. He left his alma mater in Oregon State to go to Michigan State. Just did not work out. I do think this is probably a good hire for Michigan State, though. Obviously, for those of you who don't know, Pat Fitzgerald fired from Northwestern because of I believe it was a hazing thing that happened, went to court. I believe he was proven to be innocent and not really involved in a lot of the stuff.
They settled out of court, which I think everybody took as like innocent. That's how I take it, as innocent.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think technically they settled out of court.
Okay. So they settled out of court. He's been, I guess, settled out of court. So he is not being charged with anything, or I guess at blame for everything now. I'll be interested to see how this works. I mean, Fitzgerald did have Northwestern as a pretty decent, competitor in the Big Ten. They made the Big Ten championship a couple times. Granted, that was on, they still had divisions at that point in time. So it's not like, I think that was the West side, which was pretty weak. It was usually like Wisconsin was the best team on that side. It
was all the I's. Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, Nebraska. I think they were all those.
I think it could be a good thing, and I do want to see Michigan State succeed. I think it'd be fun for college football to have them back into relevancy. Like, God, why am I'm thinking of I only have Izzo in my head, but it's not who it was. Who was their head coach for a long time?
D'Antonio.
There we go. Do you think that Fitzpatrick can do that? And we do have a guest hiding backstage. If you'd like to come on, we just talked about Will Stein there.
We don't have to let him in. No, we don't. I think as a Michigan fan, I hate it. I think it's a great hire. I think this is, again, like Kentucky, as good as it's going to get. Like, this is like spot on. I didn't even realize he was like available for it. I didn't know if he was blackballed or what, but I think it's a great hire. He knows the area. Northwestern was relevant for random years, like as good as it gets. So I think good for them. College football is not better with Michigan State being good. Michigan State's just a random team. So we don't necessarily need them to be good.
I disagree. I think I just want to see okay, we got breaking news. We've got a Kentucky insider on the backstage who wants to come in. We just talked a lot about Will Stein. For those of you who are not watching live, Mike Valerie, Kentucky insider for Camps to Canton here, is joined the show. Mike, what are your thoughts here? Will Stein to the Cats.
You got to call me the third little piggy because I'm bricked up and ready to get blown away. I am so pumped about the Cats this year.
With that. Okay.
I am so pumped about the Cats. Will Stein, we have Cutter Bully's gonna be a fine college quarterback. I don't want to overplay that, but like we have a play caller. Kentucky offense has only been fun to watch for one season. That was Will Levis during that 10-win season, and we all know that's credited to Liam Cohen, not Mark Stoops, the most winning coach of all time for Kentucky, which is nothing to brag about. But I do think he built a solid foundation. When I was there at Kentucky and I walked onto the team, we had the old athletic facilities, and they were a dump. I actually rather went to the student gym than I would the actual athletic facilities to work out. And then actually that next year is when they built the new facility. So Kentucky, isn't a football school, but it's kind of built that way now. I don't really like people want to talk about how there's certain win expectations. And like, I kind of get this side of the argument. And of course, you look across the road, you see Vandy is being successful. You see Indiana being successful. You want that for yourself. It's not that hard. There are blueprints out there. Not that you'll hit them too often, but it makes winning look a little bit more attainable. So I'm actually really excited for the Cats. Will Stein is an upcoming OC, so play calling should be really good. The defense side of the ball has always been great for Kentucky, so hopefully they can retain some defensive coaches. But it's exciting. No real big expectations next year. Hard schedule. But year two, I'm going to be very pumped to watch Kentucky football because it's hard watching just a good defensive team. Like, that's not enjoyable to watch as a fan, you know?
Yeah. No, yeah, we don't disagree.
Michigan fans will know. Michigan fans probably know what I'm talking about. So.
Yeah, it's not great at all. We were both very, very positive for Kentucky.
Yeah,
incredible hire. Yeah,
I wasn't as positive on the Cutter Boley side of things as you were, but I'm very excited
I think
for.
He could be a fine college quarterback, not Debbie. We're Debbie.
He's like a bridge guy, bridge quarterback. I didn't hate Cutter Boley. I thought for what he was fine. Like, we've seen a lot of bad quarterbacks, and as a redshirt freshman, I thought he surpassed them easily.
He's probably a top 2 passer Kentucky's had in 20 years, which is, if you look at our history, that's realistic, right? If you look at them all, so.
Hey, look, like I said, we referenced what Will Stein did at Oregon, which I think is very impressive. You cannot, again, we can't really talk about recruiting or wins because he's been an offensive coordinator, but 2 years in a row, his quarterback set the completion percentage record in college football in Bo Nix and Dylan Gabriel. So I think that I don't know that Cutter Boley is going to do that, but it was nice having you on, Mike.
Wait,
we appreciate.
Let me ask real quick, Mike. Who were you expecting to get hired? Like, what were you expecting?
I thought it was going to be
Billy Napier.
No, Summerall or bust. And then all the rumors of Will Stein and Harlan came out, and it felt like a wet dream. Like, both those names felt like out of our league. I feel like we're one of those schools that needs to reach really deep. Like, our big OC hire last year was super late, and we got the Boise OC. We're an SEC program. We got a Boise OC. Like, it just felt like we're not a destination program. I don't know where Cover 3 would always rank us on their stuff. I'm sure we're nowhere near top 20, maybe. So Will Stein felt like it feels like a wet dream. And even having Brian Hartline's name being dropped, it's like a wet dream. And all this stuff came out about Will Stein was like, grew up a Kentucky fan. His dad played for us. I didn't know any of that. I didn't know he had connections to us at all. So I was like, wow, this is actually real. Like, this could be real.
Yeah. You'll have to, in the Slack, let me know how being bricked up means any ties to a third piggy at all. But I'm curious.
It was the rest of the reference. I don't know that we should repeat it. I already had HR calling me.
The pigs and the wolf's knocking on the door. The first one, the straw house. The next one sticks. The third one's bricks in the wolf.
Got it. I needed that little help. Thank you.
Okay,
getting blown down and everything, and
you got a
Austin's
kid.
probably
You should be
Austin's
Austin's
really
I
getting
too.
down
Yeah,
right
I
now.
should have. That's what I'll think about the next time I run upon that story. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, have fun, Mike. All right, so with the last bit there, I think we can wrap up the Fitzgerald talk. The last bit of news that just recently came out while we were recording. I don't know if you had a chance to look it up, Chris, while Mike was talking about his wet dreams of Will Stein to Kentucky.
Too focused.
Just enthralled. I understand. Yeah, he's a dreamy guy, and then he comes in here talking about, bricked up wet dreams is a great segment here on C2C Live.
Austin's gonna be so pissed when he hears this.
You have no idea. I'm gonna get so many text messages in the morning. The last bit of news, players are coming out now and kind of going against what Lane Kiffin said in his statement that he asked to stay and coach. And there's been multiple players now on social media coming out and saying that is not what he said in I'm guessing, the meeting that was held at 9:00 in the morning, Sunday morning, kind of coming out against Lane Kiffin, saying that he did not ask to stay or talk to the players about staying and coaching through the playoffs. Do you think that hurts Lane's image at all? Because I think either way, I don't think he wins either way. There's been a lot of people who think he's been selfish for asking to do that. Again, I thought it was if the players wanted it, I think they should have let it happen. Sounds like that wasn't exactly what happened.
Not surprised. I don't think. It doesn't help the image. Obviously, how much does it hurt it when people at this point I think are pretty down on his image to begin with? So yeah, it's not surprising. It's funny. It's like somebody is going to leak something. To think that you could just lie about something and get away with it when there's 120 players on a college football team, it's a little bit confident.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. At the end of the day, winning cures all. So if Lane Kiffin goes to LSU and starts winning, a lot of people will forget about that and talk about how great of a coach he is. Ole Miss won't forget about it, and it'll be a new rivalry in college football every time Ole Miss plays LSU. I believe that's when the reports that that's going to be the opening game next year for those schools, which that'll be a lot of fun. But I'll be curious to see how all that goes down. But I think that's it. I don't have any other thoughts. Chris, anything else? All right. Well, nothing. Sorry.
Nothing.
Nothing.
No, I got nothing.
Well, I don't know if I'll be back next week. I don't know if I'm going to be the one who bears the suspension for Mike Valerie's interesting last tier segment on. I know Austin's not going to do anything to Chris. I'll be the one who suffers the penalties here. So maybe I'll see you guys next week. I definitely will be on tomorrow again. If you guys love the recruiting side of the game, Austin, myself, Marcus, and Matt Powell will be live twice on Wednesday, December 3rd for early signing day. We'll be talking a lot about that 2026 class, so make sure to join us. We do have the live show set up on YouTube, so make sure to hit that bell icon so you know when we actually go live. I look forward to talking to you guys again on those shows, and we will catch you guys again next week.